different. My name is Roelie Post. I'm a Dutch citizen, but I work for the European Commission as a civil servant, so as a permanent official since 1983. I did several jobs there, all very different, and I completely, truly believed. Yeah? Does that work? Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't understand what you say because I don't have my...
There is this microphone that you can use.
I would prefer that, yeah. Here it would be okay. The thing here is that if you move to the microphone, you get the light in your eyes. Yes. This is the light. So let me just retake. I worked in the European Commission since 1983. Different jobs. I truly believed in the European idea. And when the first steps were taken for the future accession of the Eastern European countries for membership of the European Union, I found that an historic opportunity, and I immediately decided that I would be proud to be part of that. So I got a job in DG Enlargement and in the Romania team on social issues. Part of that was the Romanian children file. I started on that file in March 1999, and within a month or 2 months, I realized that this was not a normal job, not a normal file. It was a file where there was a lot of outside pressure from NGOs, from states, countries, from individuals, from an investment banker who made it his life to influence the Commission on the decisions on Romanian children. And it was absolutely unclear what it was about. My predecessor, before me, the 6 years before, the task manager, as we call them, had changed every 6 months, which I found already alarming. And my predecessor gave a little pile of papers to me when he said, "Here are the Romanian children, enjoy." That was the handover. So the issue was that in Romania there were a lot of children in so-called orphanages. Yeah, they talked about 100,000, and the conditions were very bad. And so outside pressure, especially this French investment banker, had to make sure that the Commission would put it as a conditionality for accession, that this issue must be solved under the human rights criteria. This didn't happen for other countries like Bulgaria or Poland, where the conditions were, from what I've heard, fairly similar. In fact, it was not even so different, because also in the old EU member states there are children in foster care, there are children in residential care. There is child protection. It's true that the conditions in the Romanian children's homes were not good, but that was also for the whole of Romania at the time. Long story short, it was put on the political agenda, and the Commission interfered in 2 ways: monitoring the situation and assisting Romania in building up a proper child protection based on the examples of the old EU member states, because it was the first time the EU did that. So we had experts from all countries, and we had 50 million euro available, multi-annual programming, to assist Romania in building up modern child protection with foster care, with assistance for families, prevention, small-type family homes, etc. Then very soon it became clear that the fight was going to be about 2 things. Romania had just ratified a new convention, a convention on intercountry adoption, because that adoption of the last 30 years had been a lot of trafficking and mess all over the world. It was a new convention now, and now it was all going to be good, and Romania was the first country to ratify and implement that convention. But what had happened, where one would expect that the number of intercountry adoptions would go down because there's a good convention, it went rapidly up from 500 to 1,500 to 3,000 for a reasonably small country in Romania. So soon it became clear that in fact that convention had led to the fact that a perfect system was created with private agencies and very good rules, but it created a market, a demand-driven market in which children were traded abroad and in which a lot of money was involved and a lot of people which, in my view, I sometimes had the test to for myself to see how do you build your opinion. And I would meet people and I would think, if I would need an emergency babysitter tonight for my daughter, would I ask this person? And I thought, no. So then I also wouldn't really want them on the file. The pressure was also from inside the European Commission, where opinions were different. There were people who had adopted themselves from Romania or other countries. There were also people who listened to their own national government instead of to the European idea. But the then European Commissioner Verheugen, the German commissioner responsible for enlargement, he understood this issue and he said, I will not be influenced by any lobbies. And if people are pressing Romania, Romania can tell, please call me because I want no lobbies. Who were the main lobbyists? It was the US adoption agencies, Italy, France, Spain, and Israel. The way they worked is that people who want to adopt, and that's understandable, they have a strong desire, strong emotions, and they have paid a lot of money because you pay before. So once their adoptions become difficult, the agencies use the people who want to adopt to put emotional pressure on politicians. And those politicians then call the European Commission or call the Romanian Prime Minister, or, to give an example, Colin Powell when he was, I think he was Secretary of State, or perhaps had the wrong function, but he was negotiating Romania's accession to NATO. And he said to the Prime Minister of Romania, if you want to be a member of NATO, you have to reopen inter-country adoptions. That was a counter to the EU, who had said, you should close it. But the EU never said you should close adoptions. The EU said you can only do adoptions if it's in the best interest of the child, and no other considerations influence that decision. Yeah? Because as such, adoption is not a measure of child protection. Child protection is temporarily helping parents to take care of the child, or if parents cannot take care of the child, it's the state who provides care until you can take the child back or the child is independent. Anyway, long story short, I monitored the situation. I programmed the 50 million euro. It was a challenging but interesting job. I went to Romania 40 times. After 2 years, I said, I think I know all the orphanages now. And after 5 years, I jokingly said sometimes, I think I now also know all the children. So that was a big success. Romania also, under pressure of the EU, started reforming its legislation. And because also the practice had changed, the reality changed, it was also logic that at the end the rules changed, because it kind of completed the reform. But now we're in 2004, so I'm 5 years on the job, and there was a lot of pressure, so much that in 2002 I already said to my bosses, I said, I want off this job because the pressure from everywhere is so big. And I had a family, a young family at the time, and I said, I think this is going to destroy everything I have. But one of the highest bosses, an Irish woman, she convinced me, she said, please stay on. Don't let the dark side win. So I stayed on. In 2004, it became clear that Romania was going to adopt a law which would really end inter-country adoption, because they had a moratorium, which is, a moratorium is meant to be temporary. But then the law would make that a normal law, because in the Netherlands, in France, in England, Spain, Italy, we don't send children abroad. Even the US at that time didn't send that many children abroad. And because Romania had to become like the old member states, they had to, we give money, create a modern system, so you don't have to send your children outside anymore. Because those children were also not orphans. Those children had families, just like all children, because there was no war in Romania, there hadn't been a tsunami or whatever. It was just a normal situation. When it became clear that it would become permanent, the pressure became incredible. The US authorities, the Italian authorities, the French banker. I started to become intimidated, people following me. Every time there was an important meeting, I had certain people observing my house, always making a gesture of taking guns. I went to the police. The police said, please take note of everything that happens and make a separate timeline on what happens in your job. And don't be brave, because at the time I thought I could handle everything. So if somebody followed me, I looked at them and I was like, he said, don't make jokes, because we don't want to find you in the park with a knife in your back. So just ignore them and don't try to be brave. Okay. The commissioner supported, I implemented his policy. Yeah? So they were very strong in support, and I started reporting about the problems. So we started to have meetings with the Director for Human Resources and the policy directors to see whether I could get protection. Because I asked for because the first reaction was, we will take you from the job because it becomes too dangerous. But I said, that's giving in to pressure. It would be better to put a second person on the file with me, so that we built up a stronger team, because I was the only one on that dossier, and give me some protection. And make sure that this policy now gets copied for other countries, because if you close Romania, these people, these organizations, will go to other countries. So if you do something in one country as a European Commission, if you put criteria, you have to do it everywhere in the future. And that was agreed. We will come to work at that. And I thought that life is difficult, but we'll manage. But then in the end of 2004, there was a new commission. Every 5 years, like a government, you get new commissioners and a new European Parliament. And then everything changed, because then the commissioner who was taking over who took the children's dossier, as we call it, was Italian, Franco Frattini, the right hand of Berlusconi. And when I saw that, my friend said, your days are counted. And I said, well, no, I can explain, and we have rules in the European Commission, and we have to be transparent, and he has to stick to whatever. I was still confident life was okay. But 3 months later, at the same time, the intimidations I was having were increasing. They went from once per week to twice per day. So I went to the police again and again and again. At the same time, they used that to get me from my job. I refused. I wrote notes, explanations, history, everything. But then, in June 2005, I had to go to the head of Human Resources, and she said, I've been crying all weekend, but I have a message for you. You're no longer on your job as of tomorrow. And I said, why? And she said, yeah. I got a letter after I asked for it 3 days later, and it was they said I had been too long on my job, 5 years. There is no such rule. And they said, because of all the intimidations, it was not possible to continue. Then I said, so what's my new job? It took a while, but then they gave me a job, but the job was actually an office and a computer, but no work, no colleagues. It was just a non-existing job. So after 2 weeks, I wrote to my hierarchy, to the Director General, and I said, listen, I have nothing to do. This is not good for my health. I live 200 meters from the office. I'll go home. If you need me, give me a call. That was when they forced me into sick leave. They said, if you don't come, you're sick. So I went to the doctor, and my doctor in fact said, well, everything you tell me, you must be tired. So have a rest for a month or two. And I thought, yeah, that's good also, I can think. But then the medical service, so the European Commission has everything themselves. They have their own court, their own medical service, their own everything. So the medical service their medical service called me in. Yes. And I explained what had happened, and I went home. When I came home, my phone was ringing, and it was my normal general doctor. And I said, oh, what a coincidence, I just come from medical service. And she said, well, it's not a coincidence, because the medical service just called me that I have to put you on very strong medication against paranoia and schizophrenia, because apparently you're seriously ill, and it has to happen within 48 hours. So I refused that. And the month later, when the medical service called me again from the commission, I confronted that doctor and I said, you instructed my doctor, and I don't think you're allowed to do that after a 5-minute discussion. And she first denied it fully. And then when I continued and I said, I'm not going away before, she then very angrily took the phone and in front of me called my doctor and said, forget everything I told you. So I thought, done, okay, forget it, life is fine. In the meantime, I was writing my book because already in 2001, one of my bosses had told me, one day, Roelie, this will be over, and then you'll write a book or a movie will be made about this incredible story. So I started writing the book already. So at the end of 6 months later, 8 months later, I finished writing the book. And because I had the support of some friends in the hierarchy, I still felt very confident, although I was nervous. I had to find a way to get out of sick leave because the commission has forced my doctor to keep me there. Then by a weird coincidence, but this is really a coincidence, so I'm not a conspiracy thinker, my doctor died and I had to find a new doctor. But it meant that the medical service didn't know who was my doctor anymore. They kept calling me all the time, who's your new doctor, who's your new doctor? And I didn't tell them. I found a new doctor, a German doctor, and I explained the situation. She said, I have to see you 3-4 times so that I get to know you, because I said I have to get out of sick leave. I don't want to end in invalidity on psychiatric grounds or whatever, because that's what the commission does with almost all whistleblowers. So the new doctor declared me fit for work. In the meantime, I had found, because I understood already that the commission was perhaps not the best place for me anymore, because I obviously was persona non grata for many people. I found a part-time job with a new child rights NGO, and I wanted to write a PhD on children's rights. So I handed in a request for unpaid leave for 1 or 2 years, and at the same time I brought out my book. I had asked, according to the rules, the authorization to bring out the book, because that's, as a civil servant I have to do that. I got a legal letter back, which didn't say yes, didn't say no. It said just, you better take into consideration that if somebody in the commission makes a complaint, a court case against you, we will support that person. Okay. But I published anyway. But then the commission did not allow my unpaid leave, but they didn't give me that in writing, but just in talking. And a week later, I got a letter from the medical service that I had to see a psychiatrist because I was paranoia. I did go to the psychiatrist, luckily, but I brought a colleague with me, the second person they had put on my colleague who had worked with me. We went there together, and I immediately realized that this way, the things he wanted to know was, well, it was clear, it was all pre-cooked. So when I came out of that, I immediately wrote a 1.5-page letter to the Vice President of the Commission, responsible for human resources and anti-corruption. And I explained to him in a letter and a half the situation, that I did a good job, that I was highly valued by everybody, but I was removed due to pressure, and now they wanted to put me as a psychiatric case. I asked him his opinion, and I asked for my request for unpaid leave and the invalidity procedure to put on hold until his personal opinion. I never got his personal opinion. In general, in this file, I have the opinion that the lower people keep everything away from the higher bosses. I'm not so sure they really know what's going on. Long story short, I was for 6-7 months, I didn't go to work. I wasn't on sick leave. I was nothing. I was just every month like, am I getting still a salary? okay. My book got a lot of media, so I was in the media, in the German media, Dutch media, and I was all the time thinking, I'm not allowed to do this as a civil servant, but let's see how far they let me go. Nothing happened. It's about a year later, I finally was called into the commission by the cabinet of the vice president, and they said to me, yes, under this new commission, you cannot work on children's rights or not against child trafficking. You can't. And then I said, well, if you don't want me to work, I must have done something wrong, so I suggest you do your job and you fire me. I repeated that for half an hour, and then they sent me home again. And 3 months later, they came with a suggestion. They said, but you could work for an NGO or something, whatever, and we just pay you. Now, I knew that was, of course, funny. That was not, you can't pay with taxpayers' money, a civil servant, and put her in a new NGO. I knew that was all funny, but I didn't have a lot of other options if I wanted to continue to pay my bills. And at the same time, I had become a public figure on this issue, and all kinds of people were contacting me, and I formed a small group of people who really wanted to work on this issue. So then I thought, well, perhaps this is a golden opportunity, and we'll see where it ends. I said, can I get money from the EU to run that NGO, because work costs money, but no, I didn't. Whatever. In the end, I decided to accept. I had no other choice. For this NGO, I became, which I couldn't really foresee, I couldn't foresee that in 2009 the Commission would really start working, or a part of the Commission, in promoting a pro-adoption policy for the whole of Europe, which would make it, I mean, just incredible. They wanted to make it so easy and as child protection that if that would have been implemented, we would have had thousands of children going all over the world. But I was following that, and there were people sending me information, colleagues. So I was actually really monitoring and doing a civil society role, and I wrote briefing notes to the highest bosses, who would then really make sure it wouldn't happen because they knew it was wrong. But they did it all under the table. And nobody discussed the issue. It became an issue you don't talk about. And I told them often, I said, you have to put it on the table, because one day it flies back in the Commission's face, or in my face, because we do this all in secret. They didn't. Then also I discovered, of course, already during my work, but also when I was working for this NGO, which is called Against Child Trafficking, I also saw that the organizations who were the NGOs and this banker person who were trying to influence the policy, they also wanted all the money from the EU. And with that money, they did very vague, I'll make it short, they did very vague projects. So I was trying to stop those projects. It is also whistleblowing. And as soon as I did that again in 2013, my life started the intimidation started again. My salary was put in half by accident. All kinds of intimidations. My house was burglared, my car was stolen, and all in ways which were not normal. And the police also said, this is not normal, but Mrs. Post, we can't help you because our bosses do not want to interfere. Fast way forward, in 2014, my secondment contract ended with that NGO, and they said I should just come back. As I thought I didn't do anything wrong and no other options again, I just went back. I just walked back in, and I got an office, and I got a job in the contracts and finance unit, of which I didn't understand. I had to administratively close projects, so we're already 20 years closed, from which I didn't understand anything, enormous amounts of money. And so I said, I want to make a legal statement that I'm not able to do this. Long story short, I didn't, nobody talked to me, nobody welcomed me, nobody spoke with me, people ran out of the elevator if they saw me. In the end, I worked 6 months medical leave, part-time, so I worked only in the mornings. In May 2015, I decided no longer to go to work. To protect myself, my sanity, I blew the whistle about my own situation then to the Secretary General of the European Commission. I got, the reply was a phone call from the medical service that I had to see a psychiatrist, and they want to put me on invalidity again. I have handed in short, I followed the EU whistleblowing procedures which exist, which say that if you have a problem, if you want to raise an issue, you can hand in a complaint with the Secretary General. I did. Result. You can hand in a complaint with the Olaf anti-fraud. I did. You can hand in a complaint with the President of the European Parliament. I did. You can go to the police. I did. Nobody wants to touch the issue. It's like I don't exist. There are no minutes of any meetings. Anti-fraud office wanted to have a meeting with me in the canteen so that I didn't pass the security and there was no proof. Long story short, I have now decided to blow the whistle here. I'm a civil servant of the Commission. Nobody talks, nobody listens. There has been a lot of media on my case. There's a documentary which is called Search a Child, Pay Cash. It's subtitled in English. It was a German documentary. On the 13th of November, a documentary will come out about me in the US. It will be on Netflix next year. I mean, I've done all the preparatory work, but nothing works, nothing happens. So I came here to hope that I would learn, and I've learned a lot, from all of you, and to hope that somehow we can push this issue further. Last sentence I want to say is that for me the central issue is indeed that people make the whistleblower the issue, and they don't want to discuss why she is a whistleblower, because my issue they don't want to discuss. I mean, not my issue. Neither, but the issue about the children's rights and what happened over the last 10 years and what may be the eventual results in the next 10 years. Thank you for your attention. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
For being long.
Hvala vam svima. Malo smo sa vremenom odužili ovu sesiju, ali je bilo toliko zanimljivo da je zaista bilo bi šteta da vas je bilo ko prekinuo. Zato ćemo da skratimo pauzu za kafu. I pošto ovo nije prvi panel, jedini panel, već jedan od 3, bit će prilike da neka pitanja, možda i neku diskusiju otvorimo na sledećim panelima. Izvolite na pauzu za kafu. Još jednom vam hvala uz veliko divljenje za vaš rad.
It's interesting. I'm so glad I was the last one. Yeah,